Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Justin Thomas and Taylor Ragland. And gentlemen, let's do a little school year in review. I guess we began this a few weeks ago. I think we just needed content to fill an episode, so we cranked out the year in review for Plano, Rowlett, and Mesquite. So a few weeks later, let's pick that back up, and I guess for these next few episodes, just go market by market and just look back on the school year that was. So we've got three markets to touch on for today. We're going to go Carrollton, Allen, and Flower Mound. There's no real rhyme or reason why those three, but that's what we're going to go with. So, Justin, let's start over in Carrollton. Between Hebron, between Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD, just kind of reflect on the school year that was out in that neck of the woods.
We can kind of start with the CFB schools because...
what a year.
It was a year.
Realignment did them good.
It did do them good. It didn't look like it was going to during football season, but outside of the gridiron, they had a pretty good athletic seasons. Pretty much all three programs, with Smith and Turner actually made the playoffs in 5 sports. Creekview made it in 3rd, and some teams did some damage when they got in the playoffs too. So what was looking like it was going to be pretty tough at the start during football, they acquitted themselves pretty well in these other teams' bracketed sports. I guess you got to the standouts have to be kind of in the soccer, where Creekview actually made it to the regional quarterfinals, and then Turner lost in the area round. So both of the girls soccer teams had pretty good runs there, running into teams that made their way to the regional tournament. So I guess no surprise there, but they kind of equated themselves the best on the soccer pitch, boys and girls soccer, I would say.
And then you had the R.L. Turner baseball team. What was it, their first playoff appearance in like 30 years or something like crazy like that?
Yeah, I think since 1988, so almost over 30 years. And then they ended up winning in the first round and making the second round.
There you go.
And then, Smith actually finished ahead of them in district, finishing second, and they got out to the area round too. So not just getting into the playoffs, but winning some games. So encouraging signs there for the CFB programs.
Much better than being just fed to the Prospers and the Colonies and the Kenny Norths of the world the last couple years in 14-5A.
I guess then in 6A you had Hebron, and I guess kind of depends on how you want to look at things. This is a program that's won state tournaments in volleyball, girls soccer, cross country. No state tournaments for Hebron, but I don't know if you knew this, they were actually the only 6A team that made the playoffs in all 8 sports. So still a pretty good all-around season. Anytime you can get to the postseason in all 8 sports, that's a pretty little impressive feat. Things started off well with their football team, getting to the 3rd round for just the 3rd time ever, before they ran into
Richards and Pierce might have helped them out a little bit in that run too.
A little bit,
taking out Cedar Hill.
So good run for the football team, led by Trajan Bridges, and he did a little on the basketball court before he left to Oklahoma early. But just weird not talking about this volleyball team winning state. We'll have another team that won state in volleyball we'll get to later on this episode here, but still a good season for the volleyball team, getting to the 3rd round, or excuse me, not the 3rd round, falling to South Lake Carroll in the 1st round, but no shame in losing to them early. So pretty good athletic year for Hebron. Get the state in boys golf as well for the first time in 6A. So, and then Jenny Park girls golf wraps up her legendary career there, 4 times, 4 state appearances, and she gets her 3rd individual state medal. So shout out to Jenny for wrapping up her career on a positive there.
Let's see. All right, so we want to talk a little Allen now, Taylor?
Sure. You want to start with Lovejoy or Allen? Allen?
Let's start with Lovejoy first.
Okay.
Let's get the Leopards out of the way, give them their due. Another solid year for the Lovejoy Leopards. Yeah,
I mean, that's how I would describe it. It was a very typical Lovejoy athletics year. They made the playoffs in all 8 sports, runner-up to McKinney North a lot, but outside of that pair of teams, that district, not especially strong. Some up-and-coming programs, some programs that
it's a tiny district.
Yeah, so. A little feisty, but McKinney North and Lovejoy clearly clearly dominated. As usual with Lovejoy, the volleyball team made the deepest run, went all the way to the state final. Lost some intrigue there with Jason Nicholson taking the team to the state final and the run he's had, being ousted for Ryan Mitchell, the assistant coach who used to coach at Lovejoy, left to go be at Southlake, came back to Lovejoy as an assistant. So, with everything going on, I'm not sure how much they've released about it, but it seems like, he decided he wanted to come back, and Nicholson was probably, his days were numbered as soon as he decided to be back in the fold. But nevertheless, another good year, should continue. I mean, every year they're good. Every year they have the potential to go to the state tournament and win a state championship. Fell just short this year. But another team that fell just short, the boys cross country team. Third place at state after a couple of state championships in a row. So I don't know if you want to call that a disappointing year for Lovejoy. It's not in reality, but for them, who knows how they view it. But those were the two standout programs. Baseball had a really good season. I think baseball might have been their biggest kind of, you never want to say letdown for a team that went to the third round of the playoffs and went to a 3-game series and lost on a walk-off in 2 of those games. Yeah. But that team was certainly good enough to make a run to the later rounds, potentially the state tournament, and just ran into a Frisco Lone Star team that happened to get the best of them 2 nights in a row, like I said, on walk-offs. So another program that stood out, but just a very typical Lovejoy year. They have good athletics programs. Football made the playoffs. Every standings-based sport made the playoffs. Cross country and track teams were good. Volleyball was dominant, and expect kind of the same next year. That's how things go, especially in that district, like I said, when it's really McKinney North and Lovejoy at the top, and then kind of it doesn't fall off a cliff, but they're not that cowboy.
There's a pretty firm line of demarcation between them and the Shermans and the Dennisons of that district. Yeah. For Allen, for being the state's largest high school, just another kind of like Lovejoy, a typical year for the Allen Eagles. They made the playoffs in 6 of the 8 standings-based sports. They won district championships in football, girls basketball, girls soccer, and boys soccer. In addition to the girls track team won district, as did the girls swim team and the wrestling team. Wrestling team was the only state champion to come from the city, though. So whereas they made the playoffs in 6 of the 8 standings-based sports, that was second in District 9-6A, only to Prosper. But there was definitely some heft to what the Eagles accomplished once they got into the playoffs. They made it to the state tournament in 3 sports of those 8, I should say. Football, making it to the state semifinals for the 7th straight year, just continuing one of the great runs in recent Texas high school football history. Just an absolutely loaded
all-time
team.
Texas high school football history.
Yeah, it's a special run the Eagles are immersed in right now, and this team was, as loaded as any that Allen's had.
Yep.
As like Grant Tisdale, Theo Weiss, Jaden Jernigan, EJ and Doma Ogar, and they just took care of business in typical Allen fashion. And then you get to the state semifinals, and it really was kind of like an immovable object meets irresistible force dynamic with them against Duncanville, and just one of the better games that I got to cover all year. Just where Allen
surpassed only probably by that state championship game as far as good games on the whole.
Some great theatrics, and you had Allen, who was down 3 scores heading into the second half at one point, and then they erase a 21-point deficit in the third quarter alone against a Duncanville defense that hadn't allowed a single point in the third quarter all season up until that. Just couldn't get the score to push them over the top, though. Duncanville scores 9 unanswered to close that out and send the Eagles packing. But then you had the girls basketball team and what they did, and their best season ever, their best team ever, and
that was a lot of fun.
It is always cool when you see one of those teams get on just a run like that for the first time ever, and them advancing to the state tournament, and just the way that they did it. So with just this knack for coming through in the clutch. The team that just was absolutely nails in the fourth quarter in all different types of games. There was in the second round against a fairly unassuming Tyler Lee team, just an absolute defensive slog of a game that they grind out, and then they were able to beat Saxe at the buzzer, and then they turn right around and win a shootout. They almost score 80 points against Pflugerville-Hendrickson in the regional semifinals. A Hendrickson team that was ranked number 2 in the state at the time, and then they turn around and win the rubber match against district rival Prosper. Just such a fun team to watch. Players like Nia Green, who was one of 3 McDonald's All-Americans that came from District 9-6A, which still in hindsight sounds absolutely insane to think of that was even possible. Players like Tyler Jackson, Sydney Adams, who became just this playoff hero out of nowhere.
Man, that was awesome.
It was so much fun to watch them, and they ran into kind of a team of destiny once they got to the state tournament against Old Converse Judson. upsets, and but then you had in soccer, some history made there with the boys team winning its first ever district championship, the boys and the girls winning district titles in the same year, and both going at least 4 rounds deep in the playoffs. The boys got to the regional semis, girls went to the state semifinals. Justin, you were there to see their state semifinal game. A little bit of heartbreak in that game as they had to battle through an injury to Jordan Colbert, one of their captains, one of their anchors.
Pretty gruesome one.
And a loss to Katie Tompkins, but just two great teams that thrived on defense. I want to say the girls allowed something only like 1 goal through the first 5 rounds of the playoffs. And then you look at like what the baseball team was able to accomplish. Going 3 rounds deep, finishing second in that brutal district, and they ran into Region 2's Team of Destiny in McKinney Boyd, and one of the great just what could have beens for Allen this year was in Game 2 of that series. What happens if Boyd left fielder Jack Brinkley doesn't make a diving catch for that final out, which would have, if he doesn't make that catch, that scores the tying and go-ahead runs in that game. Allen potentially in position to sweep Boyd, and who knows what happens from that point on. But nevertheless, a strong year for Allen as far as the standings-based sports goes. And then you look, kind of elsewhere with what Jacob Clark did for the swim team, finishing second in the 500 freestyle or whatnot at the state swim meet. The tennis team finished second in the district, but wound up being the last team standing out of 9-6A in the playoffs as they went to the regional finals, matching their deepest run ever, only to fall to eventual 6A state champ Round Rock Westwood. And then you have the wrestling team, man.
Yeah. I feel like we beat the wrestling team's dominance to death on this podcast sometimes, but it's the only way to talk about it.
You can't say enough good things about it, though, man. It really is one of these special runs of any athletics program in the state. An entire decade of state championships.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like I said, I feel like we just kind of pounded in the ground, but what else are you going to say? They've been the most dominant program at that school, including football, for 10 years. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And then just you look off the field at some of the headlines that they made, the biggest being what happened in the college football and pretty soon the NFL with Kyler Murray becoming a national megastar, and it felt like just kind of a blink of an eye. I mean, this fairly for all he accomplished at Allen, fairly at least unheralded in the college landscape prior to this year at OU, and he has one of the great seasons ever for any college quarterback. Wins the Heisman Trophy and goes on to be picked number 1 in the NFL draft. One of 3 Allen players to get drafted, Bobby Evans and Greg Little going in the 2nd round of the Carolina Panthers, Evans in the 3rd round of the LA Rams. I mean, Allen ends the draft with more players selected than several Big 12 programs, including the University of Texas.
Had to fit that one in there, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just more greatness from Allen, which is these days it's just kind of how it rolls in that neck of Collin County. That's a look at least at Carrollton and Allen. Justin, you got one more to talk about, so we'll give you a chance to catch your breath and talk a little Flower Mound in a moment after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. All right, and let's wrap this up as we continue our school year in review series. We've talked Carrollton, we've talked Allen. Justin, what about Flower Mound, man? What happened in Flower Mound this year?
Not a whole lot.
pretty low key, pretty ho hum year over in that part of Denton County.
Yeah, there's
man. The year of the Jaguar.
The year of the Jaguar buzz started really early in the fall and just kept rolling all season long. It was a really fun year to follow things in Flower Mound, in particular at Flower Mound High School. Sorry, Marcus, you guys didn't quite stack up to the Jaguars this year.
Very few schools did, though, so there's no shame in that game.
Coming into they haven't tabulated softball and baseball into the Lone Star Cup standings, but Flower Mound going into those sports was ranked 3rd, so got to imagine that's their highest finish ever. They were just ahead of the team we just talked about, Allen. I think Allen was in 4th. Don't think anybody's going to catch Southlake after winning state in baseball again.
It would appear unlikely.
So probably not going to get higher than 3rd, but still a pretty awesome year for Flower Mound. I guess I'll start with Marcus real quick, though.
Sure.
Tough to stack up, but still a pretty good year for Marcus. They make the playoffs. They return to the playoffs in volleyball, so I know they were encouraged by that. Get there in girls basketball, boys soccer, girls softball, and baseball. So, there's no shame there. They just didn't quite achieve the postseason success that Flower Mound did, so that's why they kind of got a little overshadowed there. But still a good year for Marcus, especially when you look at what some of their teams lost, especially girls soccer, bouncing back and still having a real strong year. But we're going to focus more on the Jaguars here. Made the playoffs. 7 of 8 sports, boys basketball and girls basketball were the only ones they missed, so 6 of the 8 there. But they win 4 district titles. It starts with football, coming out of nowhere, really kind of getting a buzz going in the athletic department there at Flower Mound. Everybody kind of seemed to really feed off the success that Flower Mound's football team had to kind of start off the year, getting their first district title and breaking that long playoff drought. Then you had the volleyball team. To some people, they came out of nowhere. I know
Not to this man right
here. We were
here.
hyping them on the podcast because they were really strong in non-district. And
Taking those state polls
Really
to task
strong
every chance you
yeah,
could.
well, it was
You look at
ridiculous.
6A as far as the teams, the volleyball programs just in their district and how good they were playing.
Yeah.
The whole year we didn't know what the eventual result would be, but they were solid from start to finish.
Yeah, they went out to the John Turner tournament in Pearland, got second there, played good at that PSA tournament, got right into district, suffered an early loss to Coppell, but avenged that, took the district title, got to the playoffs, upset the number 1 team, Byron Nelson, in the 3rd round, and then just really took off from there. They rolled Southlake in the regional final, and then you were out there at the state tournament. Didn't have too many scares in the state tournament, winning them both in 4 sets. So real cool story there with the volleyball team, but they weren't finished there. They get boys and girls cross country, each medal at the state meet. And then we go into the spring, and the Cardiac Jags on the soccer field, they win their first state championship in boys soccer. Multiple dramatic come-from-behind wins, multiple shootout victories, including the state championship match. And they almost got another team out the state after that when you look at, they did actually, if you count golf. So they made it out in girls golf and then almost get there in baseball. The Jags come up short against the eventual champ Dragons in the Region 1 finals. So add it all up, 3rd in the Lone Star Cup, 2 state titles, multiple medals. So really awesome year for Flower Mound. And I guess you mentioned Kyler Murray. I guess I got to kind of mention, one of their legendary players, Lauren Cox, winning, playing a key role in Baylor's championship girls basketball team. So not just high school, big year at college level for the Lady Jags as well, with Lauren Cox getting that done.
You can make a case that just between the 5A and 6A schools that we covered, Flower Mound have the best year of anybody in our coverage area.
I would have to say so.
I think so. It's hard to top, especially those. 6A volleyball is a beast, and they won state there. 6A soccer is a beast. Baseball, what are you going to do? You get beat by Southlake in the regional final.
Yeah,
but just the overall effort, the championships, I can't think of anybody that had a better year.
I didn't even mention Alex Meyer and Natalie Cook winning medals at state track as well.
And football, like you said.
Shout out to L'Oreal Daniel from Marcus, too. She got a couple. But, I would have to say Flower Mound was the best all-around program here,
Crazy. What kind of odds could you have got on that heading into the school year?
Yeah.
Pretty good ones.
I think one of the things to note is, though, I know they're different sports and stuff, but it really seems like some programs really do feed off the success of other sports. I think what football started and volleyball started permeated throughout the whole program throughout the year.
Well, and vice versa too, because if you, we're not going to go into this in detail, but you look at Plano West's athletic year and how bad football was, it kind of tinges the whole year, and you view it that way. When really Plano West didn't have that bad of a year, but just the way it started, and with football, you kind of look at this year and be like, oh, Plano West.
But these kids are all friends in their schools and stuff. And when you see one team doing it and you say, oh, volleyball do it, why can't soccer do it? And why can't cross country do it? And I think it really kind of has a build-up effect at times.
And that'll do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We've got 6 markets down, 8 to go. We'll touch on 4 when the podcast resumes on Monday. I'm going to be out next week. Yeah. So for anybody who's a fan of the mat-free presentation, then next week is a dream come true for you. So we will pick up the podcast on Monday. Let's see. My schedule says Coppell, Louisville, Frisco, and McKinney. Do a little more school year in review for those. Folks, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to you all later.